Have you ever wondered why some people can walk into a room and instantly sense the unspoken truths beneath the surface? Who's insecure, who's performing, who's quietly observing? Why some can glance once and read what others fail to see after years? They are not gifted in language, nor armed with surveillance. They are fluent in the language of the mind. They have learned to observe not just behavior, but the soul that shapes it. Nietzsche called it the gaze that pierces masks. To him, the greatest courage was not in conquering others, but in facing the mirror when the persona began to crack. Because to see the world clearly, one must first see themselves without distortion. But how many dare? How many are willing to look beyond the curated performance of identity to the raw, trembling truths beneath? Most don't want to observe the mind, they want distraction. They crave the narrative that keeps them safe, that they are kind, good, in control. But Nietzsche warned us, every profound spirit needs a mask. The ego wears it to survive. The unconscious wears it to seduce. The wounded child within wears it to avoid rejection. And so the world becomes a masquerade, one where we learn to love the mask more than the face beneath it. But there is another path, the path of the observer. This is the one who sits in silence and listens not just to words, but to motives. Who watches the micro-reactions, the pauses, the hesitation before a compliment. The way someone's eyes shift when you get too close to the truth. The way their body contracts when you touch the places they've spent a lifetime avoiding. These are not coincidences, they are signals, markers, symbols carved into flesh by old experiences. You begin to understand. Every reaction is a relic. Every emotion is a thread. Every defense is a map back to a forgotten wound. Nietzsche was not merely a philosopher of ideas. He was a surgeon of illusions. He asked not what do you think, but why do you believe what you believe? And more importantly, who does that belief serve? Because beneath every belief is a contract, often signed in childhood, about who we must become in order to be safe. The man who becomes stoic not from wisdom but from fear of rejection. The woman who becomes soft-spoken not from grace but from having been punished for taking up space. The friend who plays the jester because seriousness was once met with ridicule. These are not traits, they are trauma adaptations. And the one who observes learns to see through them. But to see others, you must first watch yourself. You must begin to notice the places where you tighten, when you speak louder than needed, when your words try to impress rather than connect, when you interrupt silence because silence reveals too much. These are not random behaviors. They are signs of unresolved patterns still pulling the strings beneath your surface. When you observe your mind, truly observe, you start to see just how much of your life is reflex. That you argue not to defend truth, but to defend identity. That you avoid some people not because they're bad, but because they activate the parts of you you've buried. That you crave admiration, not for joy, but to anesthetize your fear of invisibility. And when that awareness arrives, it humbles you, but it also sets you free. Because now you're no longer owned by your past. You are no longer a puppet dancing to unconscious rhythms. You begin to slow down. You begin to choose. You begin to watch your thoughts like clouds, your reactions like wind, present but not permanent. And from that space, you begin to see others with the same clarity. You see the woman whose flirtation is armor, the man whose dominance hides a disowned boy, the lover who withdraws not from malice but from terror of being known. And you no longer take it personally. You no longer chase. You no longer try to fix. You simply see. To truly see is not to expose, but to understand. It is not to corner someone into confession, but to witness them gently, with the kind of awareness that makes their defenses tremble, not from fear, but from recognition. Because when someone realizes they've been fully seen and not judged, something ancient inside them begins to soften. It is the first crack in the armor of the persona, and once that crack appears, the soul begins to speak. This is what Nietzsche meant when he wrote, "We are unknown to ourselves, we knowers." We carry within us labyrinths of motive, of memory, of shame and yearning, and yet we walk as if we are singular, simple, defined. But the truth is more chaotic. The truth is archetypal. Jung called it the confrontation with the shadow, the moment when the unconscious emerges, not as a monster, but as a mirror. And you begin to realize that much of what irritates you in others is a reflection of what you refuse to meet in yourself. The one who angers you holds a piece of your unlived self. The one who attracts you inexplicably reflects a lost desire, a forgotten fire, a missing polarity within you. To observe the mind is to study this constant projection, to see how you cast parts of yourself onto others, your shame, your brilliance, your envy, your ache. You think you're reading them, but really you're reading your own psyche through the shape of their presence. And so the real work begins within. You sit in solitude and you listen. You observe the thoughts that rise without invitation. You track the looped narratives. I'm not enough. I must be impressive. They're going to leave. You question not the world, but the storyteller inside your own head. You learn to hold the discomfort of awareness without reaching for distraction. And in that stillness, something profound happens. You begin to detach, not in apathy, but in clarity. You no longer confuse emotional activation for love. You no longer label discomfort as danger. You stop needing to be understood and instead become obsessed with understanding. Not because you want control, but because you want truth. And truth, real truth, is found not in words, but in subtlety, in pauses, in tension, in the way the body betrays what the ego tries to protect. Imagine being in conversation and noticing that when you speak with certainty, the other person's left hand twitches. The tiniest movement, but it speaks volumes. Or seeing the smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes, the delayed laugh, the deflected compliment, the compulsive need to justify. These are not signs of character. They are artifacts of the unconscious. They are the evidence of internal conflict. And now you begin to read people like poetry. Each person is a collection of metaphors, a body wrapped in stories they don't yet know they're telling. And you are no longer fooled by volume or status or sophistication. You listen beneath the language. You feel the emotion beneath the logic. You track where their words and their energy no longer align. And when that happens, you don't expose them. You hold space. Because the goal is not dominance. The goal is liberation. Theirs and yours. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free." And the greatest bravery is to face oneself without the shield of narrative. Most people cannot do this. They will protect their image with teeth and claws. They will perform kindness to avoid being called selfish. They will perform strength to avoid the grief they never processed. And so they live in performance, disconnected, exhausted, unseen. But you, the observer, you have left the theater. You are not watching to critique. You are watching to connect. Because when you see the game, you are no longer in it. And in that space, you create a different kind of intimacy, one where performance dies and presence is born. This kind of presence is rare. It quiets a room, it invites honesty, it unnerves those who still depend on their mask, but it awakens those who are ready to be real. It becomes magnetic, not through charisma, but through clarity. And clarity, once tasted, makes chaos unbearable. Now your standards change, not out of superiority, but out of reverence. You no longer engage with energy that demands you abandon your own awareness. You no longer explain your insight to those who mock their own reflection. You no longer shrink to make others comfortable in their unconsciousness. You simply remain, calm, sharp, deeply rooted in what you see. From this place of rooted perception, your very presence begins to disorient the unaware. Not because you speak loudly, not because you expose, but because you don't bite the bait. You do not join the games. You don't follow the script written by fear. And when someone cannot manipulate your attention, your validation, your emotion, they are forced to confront the emptiness of their own performance. This is the invisible power of the one who observes. Nietzsche believed that strength comes not from domination, but from depth. The deeper you go into yourself, into your motives, your wounds, your distortions, the more you liberate your vision from the need to distort others. When you no longer fear your shadow, you no longer project it. And suddenly, the world softens, the war quiets. You stop turning others into enemies just to avoid your own reflection. Now you start to see through love, not sentimental, romantic love, but archetypal love. The kind of love that knows every mask is made of pain, that every harsh word carries a hidden plea for safety, that even the ones who hurt you are trying to protect something broken within them. But this does not mean tolerance. This is not permission to be disrespected. This is discernment. You can love what you see while walking away. You can understand someone's trauma without offering your nervous system as a battlefield for their war. Because awareness is not passive, it is fiercely protective of truth, and truth always reveals itself in silence. This is why you begin to speak less. You no longer need to prove that you see, you simply do, and those who are attuned will feel it. In the way your eyes don't flinch when met with discomfort, in the way your body stays calm when chaos enters the room, in the way your words come slower, deeper, without the need to be understood, because understanding is already present, within you. You are not here to convince, you are here to see, and let that seeing shape how you move. And how you move begins to change everything. You stop chasing connection that demands you abandon your clarity. You stop over-explaining yourself to minds not trained in stillness. You stop staying in conversations that only feed the illusion. You start choosing differently. Who you give time to, who you let into your nervous system, who you let see you. Because now you know the cost of unconsciousness. You know what it feels like to be around people who can't sit with themselves, and so they fill every silence with noise. You know the feeling of emotional pollution, the kind that looks like charm but smells like control. You know the taste of empty praise, the flattery that drips with agenda. And you've grown tired, not bitter, just done. Done with performance, done with second-guessing your perception, done with lowering your gaze just to keep the peace. The one who sees doesn't fear solitude, because solitude becomes sanctuary. It is there that you refine your vision, that you watch your own mind until it begins to soften, reveal, surrender. In that sanctuary, the ego starts to speak in quieter tones. It's no longer screaming for attention. It is whispering its pain. It is showing you where it learned to defend, to chase, to hide. And you, now brave enough to stay, begin the slow work of reparenting your own psyche. You do not shame yourself for being reactive, you observe. You do not berate yourself for patterns, you study them. And slowly, those patterns begin to lose their grip. You catch the impulse before it becomes behavior. You watch the old need to impress rise, and you smile. You breathe instead. You choose stillness. You choose silence. That is power. Because in that silence, you no longer confuse noise with truth. You no longer mistake attention for love. You no longer believe that your worth depends on how you're perceived. You have seen too much. You have gone too deep. And you have returned with something rare, inner space. A spaciousness within that allows you to respond, not react. You become the calm in the storm, not by effort, but by awareness. Because when you observe the mind long enough, you begin to realize you are not the mind. You are the witness, and the witness cannot be threatened. There is something terrifyingly beautiful about no longer being hostage to your own reactions. It's not that the triggers disappear. They still echo, still rise like ghosts in the nervous system, but you no longer belong to them. You are no longer possessed by the emotion. You see it, you feel it, and you choose. That space between stimulus and response becomes sacred. It becomes your temple. And in that temple, you hold the authority of the silent, the strength of the unmoved, the grounded presence of one who has sat in the fire of their own mind and did not run. That kind of presence cannot be faked. It cannot be taught through surface-level self-help. It is earned through ruthless self-observation, through the descent into your own unconscious, through the shedding of falsehoods you once called identity. Now, when you speak, people listen, not because your voice is louder, but because it carries the weight of someone who is not hiding. And most have never heard a voice like that. They're used to noise, to projection, to insecurity dressed in confidence. But when you speak from clarity, from embodied knowing, it interrupts their programming. It opens a doorway. Some will walk through it, others will run, but all will feel it. This is why observing the mind is not a soft, contemplative act. It is a radical rebellion against unconscious existence. It is choosing to dismantle the false self brick by brick, not with aggression, but with honesty. And that honesty becomes your compass. You no longer need external validation to feel safe. You have looked inside and survived what you saw. And now, there's nothing left to fear. But it goes deeper still. Because when you begin to observe yourself and others with this kind of presence, you start to sense a deeper intelligence moving beneath it all. You begin to feel the archetypes at play, the inner child, the wounded warrior, the hidden queen, the exiled lover. You recognize these energies in your own speech, in the eyes of strangers, in the posture of a man trying too hard to appear calm. It becomes a spiritual sight, not mystical, not new age, but raw, human, real. You realize that every person is carrying something holy and haunted, that beneath the words, there is always something unsaid, that no one is simply their ego. They are a landscape of unmet needs and ancient longings. And this knowing softens your gaze. It strengthens your boundaries, but opens your heart. You stop expecting perfection. You stop needing resolution. You become curious instead of judgmental. You start asking questions that invite truth instead of defending illusions. What are they afraid I'll see? What part of me feels the need to be right? What story am I telling myself in this moment? And is it true? These questions don't come from intellect. They rise from observation. They rise when you've created enough inner stillness to hear something other than your ego. And in that stillness, patterns begin to break. The need to always have the last word? Gone. The fear of being misunderstood? Released. The impulse to rescue others from their discomfort? Dissolved. Because now you understand, transformation doesn't happen in the comfort zone. It happens in the pause, the tension, the space where the truth first feels unbearable. You no longer rush to soothe that moment for yourself or others. You let it burn, not to destroy, but to reveal. Nietzsche said, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star." And you begin to see that chaos was never the enemy. It was the soil, the womb, the crucible of the true self. The false self avoids the mirror. The true self learns to stare and stay. And when you stay long enough, you begin to love what you see. Not because it is flawless, but because it is real. You no longer need to perform wholeness. You become whole through acceptance. So now you move differently. You enter conversations like an open field, sensing what others bury, holding what others deny. You're not here to fix. You're not here to win. You're here to witness. And witnessing becomes an act of love, a radical love that doesn't cling, doesn't control, doesn't demand. It just sees. And in a world addicted to distraction, that kind of vision is revolution. Eventually, the greatest truth dawns not with thunder, but with silence. That the more clearly you see, the less you need to speak. The more you observe, the less you chase. You begin to understand that power is not in movement, but in restraint, in not reacting, in letting the storm pass without opening your gates to it. You watch people the way you watch weather, with presence, not panic. Their anger no longer triggers your defenses. It reveals their pain. Their withdrawal no longer feels like rejection. It speaks of their inner chaos. Their admiration doesn't inflate you, and their judgment doesn't define you. Why? Because you've gone beyond the shallow waves of approval and offense. You are now rooted where most people don't even dare look, inside. And from this ground, you begin to experience what only the few ever reach: peace that doesn't need conditions. Peace that isn't based on how others behave, how situations unfold, or how the world treats you. It is peace that emerges from seeing clearly, from living consciously, from no longer giving your life over to unconscious patterns and emotional reflexes. This is what Nietzsche longed for, not a society of obedient men, but a world of awakened individuals, those who are no longer victims of inherited belief or reflexive emotion. He spoke of the Übermensch not as a superior being, but as a self-realized one, a person who has descended into the depths of the psyche and returned with gold, with self-mastery. Because self-mastery isn't domination over others. It is freedom from the need to react to them. It is the ability to sit with discomfort, to listen without defense, to walk away without resentment. It is what Stoics called inner citadel, that sacred place within where nothing external can shake your core. When you reach this space, you no longer confuse intensity with intimacy. You stop mistaking chemistry for compatibility. You no longer project potential onto people simply because you want to see the best in them. You see what is, and you allow what is to be enough, or not. But you don't distort, you don't deny, and most importantly, you don't abandon yourself. Because now you know the difference between love and attachment, between respect and validation, between being seen and being used for someone else's comfort. You no longer shrink your light to be accepted by the blind. You no longer explain your intuition to those committed to misunderstanding. You walk with presence, you speak with intention, you observe with depth. And where others are still bound to the turbulence of emotion and the compulsions of the ego, you move like still water, steady, deep, impossible to disturb without permission. People will feel this. They won't always understand it. Some will think you're cold, others will say you're intense. But those with eyes to see will recognize the truth in you. And they will rise, not to mirror your image, but to meet your depth with their own. You will not need many. The one who sees does not need the crowd. They walk with the few who've dared to unmask themselves. Their tribe is silence, clarity, presence, sovereignty. Their intimacy is built not on noise, but on mutual awareness. And as you walk this path, the path of the observer, the awakened, the undisturbed, you will begin to notice something miraculous. You no longer seek, you attract. Not through strategy, not through manipulation, but through frequency, through the resonance of one who has come home to themselves. You will draw in others who are done performing, done pretending, done reacting. And what unfolds will not be loud, but sacred. It will not be dramatic, but true. This is the power Nietzsche hinted at, the power of one who no longer looks outward to understand the world, but looks inward, and in doing so, sees everything. So remember this, you do not need to be perfect to be powerful. You only need to be present. You only need to see without distortion, to love without possession, to walk without fear. Because in a world of reactions, the one who observes is king. The one who sees does not need to win the argument. They win through intentional stillness.